The sizzle of scallops hitting the pan rang out like tiny firecrackers. A knife struck the cutting board with a steady, decisive rhythm. "Oui, chef." The head chef's voice barked like a command in a military camp. The air in Aura's kitchen was thick with the scent of truffle oil, brown butter sauce, and tension. Every movement was precise, like choreography. Miss a beat, and you'd be swallowed whole. Amid the organized chaos in a quiet corner of the kitchen, Eleanor Vance leaned over gloved hands, carefully placing a honey-glazed rib into a meal box. The rib had been marinated the night before. Its golden brown surface glistened under the lights. Next to it, pan-seared asparagus still held its tender green color and crisp bite. This wasn't leftovers, it was a real meal. She added a thin slice of golden orange on top, like a gentle pat on the back. Beside her stood Leo, leaning against the wall, pale from hunger and exhaustion. His waiter uniform was worn at the collar. His eyes were sunken, his hair messy, his hands slightly trembling. "Double shift today?" Eleanor asked, eyes still on the lunchbox. Leo gave a small nod, lips pressed tight. She let out a quiet breath, not judging, just sliding the box toward him. "Sit. Eat while it's hot. Don't let Marcus see." Leo hesitated, but the growl in his stomach and the smell from the box broke his will. He opened the lid. The scent of honey and black pepper rose up. He picked up a plastic fork and gently pierced the rib, bringing it to his mouth as if lifting a treasure. Eleanor sat beside him, saying nothing more. Her thin hands picked up stray pieces of greens on the counter, like a mother, more used to caring than speaking love out loud. At the far end of the kitchen line, Julian Croft, in the uniform of a trainee, was wiping down the steel counter. He didn't look their way, but in his chest pocket, his phone was recording. Not for evidence, but to capture something rare in Aura kindness. No one spoke, but for a moment the kitchen softened. The shouting, the clash of steel, they still echoed. But in that corner, a small silence bloomed, a hot meal in the storm of cold steel. Eleanor glanced at Leo devouring the food. She smiled faintly. "No dish is worth anything if it's made with indifference," she said softly. Leo nodded, unable to speak. His eyes welled up, not from onions, but because for the first time in days he felt seen. The steel kitchen door swung open. No one said a word, but the air instantly froze. Marcus Thorne entered, charcoal-gray tailored suit tie, knotted with razor precision. He didn't walk fast, but every step echoed with authority. His cold, sharp eyes swept across the kitchen like a security scanner. Then he saw Leo. Leo was in the corner, lunchbox, open fork in hand, half a rib still uneaten. Eleanor stood nearby, her back turned, but she already knew what was coming. Her hands tightened. She didn't look at Marcus. "What's this?" Marcus said. His voice wasn't loud, but it silenced every knife, every clatter of pans. Leo shot up, trying to hide the lunchbox, but it was too late. Marcus approached, staring into the box like it was something filthy. "We have a clear policy on employee meals. You know that, Leo." His tone was flat, not angry, just cold. Then his gaze shifted to Eleanor. "And you know the rules on outside food. You signed the food safety handbook." Remember, he didn't wait for an answer. Marcus leaned down and picked up the lunchbox. No one breathed, no one moved. He didn't throw it, he didn't shout. He simply walked over to the stainless steel trash bin in the corner. Standing tall, he opened the lid. Eleanor opened her mouth, about to speak, but Marcus tilted the box. The rib slid out, first landing straight into wet coffee grounds and used napkins. The asparagus followed limp beside shrimp shells and orange peels. The honey glaze melted into the trash juice, creating a sickening, sour stench. A $20 meal, Marcus said, and a policy violation worth far more. He turned and placed the empty box onto the steel counter. Aura doesn't run on pity. We serve world-class dining experiences, not a soup kitchen. Eleanor said nothing. She just stared at the trash. Leo clenched his fists, eyes locked on the floor. He didn't feel hungry anymore. He felt stripped bare in front of the whole kitchen, not because of hunger, but because he'd been treated like a beggar. Marcus glanced around. No one dared meet his eyes. "Mrs. Vance," he said, "I trust this will be the last time." He left as if he'd never been there. The steel door closed behind him with a chilling thud. The kitchen stayed silent. Then the knives and pans resumed faster, sharper, not out of urgency, but out of fear. Eleanor stood motionless. A warm meal had become a humiliating lesson, and she knew she'd just been marked. In the far corner of the kitchen, Julian Croft was still wiping down the stainless steel fridge, head lowered. He showed no expression, but the phone in his chest pocket was still recording. Every word Marcus had said, every pause, even the sound of the lunchbox hitting the trash, it was all captured clear and cold, just like the way Marcus had discarded that meal. Julian tightened his grip on the cloth in his hand, eyes still fixed on an imaginary smudge on the steel surface. He couldn't intervene. Not yet. But he also couldn't let that moment vanish like it never happened. He opened his messaging app and typed Phase 1 complete. Continue tracking Marcus Thorne. Then he hit send. At the front of the restaurant, the atmosphere was entirely different. The dining area felt like a stage. Elegant golden lights lit up the plates, arranged like artwork. Every server's step was rehearsed. Every smile is carefully calibrated. At a VIP table near the open kitchen, a woman in her 40s, with neatly tied dark brown hair, sat alone. In front of her was a foie gras dish, glistening with red sauce, and an expensive glass of white wine. But she wasn't focused on the meal. Her name was Clara Jenkins, a veteran food critic from the New York Times. She had come to write a review on Aura, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. But what held her attention now wasn't the goose liver or the crunch of the toast. Through the sliver of the kitchen door, she had just witnessed a strange scene. A man in a suit, not a chef, had dumped a full steaming meal into a trash bin in front of an older woman and a scrawny young man. She didn't need sound to sense something was wrong. The woman stood, frozen, the way the boy's head bowed as if ashamed, and the way the man walked away, cold as steel. Clara picked up her phone. She didn't intend to do anything, but her fingers opened the video app, aimed toward the kitchen. "Not my business," she muttered. "I'm here to write about food, not back-of-house drama." Still, her hand kept recording. She zoomed in, capturing Eleanor, beside the trash can, shoulders slumped. Blurry, silent, but it told the whole story, power and humiliation. Clara stopped the recording after a few seconds. She knew she had just captured something bigger than a meal, something not on the menu. In the back, Julian glanced toward Eleanor, then down at his phone. In this world, kindness was often mistaken for weakness, but he knew, if captured at the right moment, it could become evidence, and a spark for a storm. The next morning, in Aura's internal management chat, Marcus Thorne posted a photo, the lunchbox lying among garbage, the honey-glazed rib stuck to coffee grounds and used napkins. Attached was a short message, a gentle reminder: "We run a Michelin-starred restaurant, not a soup kitchen. Eliminate all inefficiencies." The notification popped up on every department manager's phone. No one reacted with a like, no one replied, but everyone read it and feared it. In the staff break room, Eleanor sat alone with a cup of cold tea. No one spoke to her. She used to be the first person others turned to when they were tired or needed advice. Now, no one dared come near. Every time she entered, conversations stopped. Some got up and moved away. No one said a word, but their eyes averted from her like she was a live wire. No one hated her. They were just afraid of being associated, afraid Marcus would notice, afraid of losing their job. Eleanor didn't blame them. She simply sat still, gently holding the chipped porcelain cup. She had once believed Aura was her second family. She had cooked here when the restaurant was just a small kitchen rented in Chinatown. She had watched it grow step by step to earn its Michelin star. But now she wasn't sure this was still a place she belonged. Julian walked through the corridor leading to the kitchen, hearing the silence press down like a graveyard. Everyone kept their heads down, working faster, speaking less. No more quiet laughter or awkward thank yous when someone shared a piece of cake. He paused near the prep station. Eleanor was slicing onions. Her hands were steady, the slices even. But there was no gentleness in her motions anymore, no light in her eyes. Julian looked at her, wanting to say something, but he only gave a small nod and moved on. That evening, Leo finished his shift and stored his uniform in his locker. Someone brushed past him without a greeting. He thought about waiting for Eleanor to walk together to the subway like they always did. But tonight, he hesitated. He was grateful to her. But now just being seen next to her might be enough to cost him his job. Leo needed tuition money. He needed this job. He looked down at his worn-out shoes and walked away in silence. Eleanor stepped out of the restroom, saw the empty chair, and saw the locker room door slowly closing. She understood. She didn't blame him, but the loneliness inside her rose like a cold tide. In his private office, Marcus sat in front of his computer screen. He reread his message, satisfied. No yelling needed. A single photo and one sarcastic line were enough to bring the entire restaurant into quiet obedience. He believed kindness was a luxury that couldn't be measured on a KPI sheet. 2 days later, a shipment of premium ingredients, imported Italian white truffles and caviar, arrived late due to a supplier error. It wasn't a major issue, but to Marcus, it was an opportunity. At 9 a.m., Eleanor was summoned to the office. The room was cold and sleek glass walls, metal desk, not a single picture. It looked more like an interrogation chamber than a workspace. Marcus was already seated behind the desk, computer open. Without looking up, he said, "Mrs. Vance, have a seat." Eleanor sat down gently, as she always did. Her hands rested on her lap, steady, but her eyes were cautious. "Recent performance reports show delays in prep operations," he said, typing a few lines before turning the screen toward her. "And today, the truffle shipment was rejected. Processing time exceeded our standards." Eleanor pressed her lips together. "That was due to the delivery service. I already reported." Marcus raised a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to inform." He slid a white envelope across the desk. "The company is moving toward a leaner, more efficient model. We need people who align with that vision. Unfortunately, you no longer do. No thank you." No regret in his eyes. Just a statement, like reading the weather. Eleanor opened the envelope. Inside was a termination letter and a severance package, 3 weeks' pay. Enough to survive. Maybe a month if she stretched every dollar. "Your security badge will be deactivated in 10 minutes, Marcus added, still staring at his screen. Eleanor stood. She said nothing. No pleading, no excuses. She simply picked up the envelope, turned, and walked out as quietly as she had lived for decades in that kitchen. The kitchen at Aura buzzed as usual. Knives, chopping pans, sizzling orders, shouted. But as Eleanor walked in, one final time, the noise seemed to pause. She opened her locker. Inside, an old handkerchief, a wedding photo with her late husband, a soldier, and a small spice jar she used to brighten her soups. She placed them into a cloth bag, closed the locker, and pulled her badge from her pocket. The screen flashed red, deactivated. She wasn't surprised. As she passed the prep station, a few staff looked her way. No one spoke. No one said goodbye. Just silence thick, like scentless smoke. Leo stood near the sink, wanting to run after her, to say something, but his feet felt glued to the floor. The back kitchen door closed behind Eleanor with a soft click. She didn't cry, but in her eyes, something had died. 9:03 p.m. Clara Jenkins's review went live on the New York Times. The title, Behind the Michelin Stars, lies a restaurant without a heart. She didn't just talk about the food. She spoke about a coldness that couldn't be named. At that moment, she witnessed a man dump an employee's meal into a trash can right in front of her. I couldn't hear what they said, Clara wrote, but I saw the older woman's eyes. I saw the young man too ashamed to lift his head. I saw cruelty carried out with such calm, it was chilling. At the end of the piece, Clara included a short, blurry, silent video, just a few seconds long. But the image of Eleanor standing before the trash can and Marcus tilting the lunchbox like he was pouring out leftovers was more than enough. 9:30 p.m. On Twitter, the clip was reshared hundreds of times. One user wrote, "They threw out a family meal in front of her face." An aura of cruelty 10:0 p.m. The hashtag an aura of cruelty began trending. Users flooded Aura's Yelp page with one-star reviews. The food might be pretty, but the soul is hollow. Her husband was a veteran, and they treated her like garbage. Don't support a place where kindness is a punishable offense. 10:15 p.m., a former Aura employee reposted the article and added, "I used to work there. This story doesn't surprise me. Marcus is why I left." 10:45 p.m. A veterans organization publicly voiced support for Eleanor. She cared for her husband for the last 10 years of his life. She deserves respect. 11:00 p.m. The restaurant's phone rang non-stop. Nearly 200 reservations for the upcoming week were cancelled. 11:20 p.m. On the stock exchange, shares of Aura's parent company began to dip slightly, despite markets not yet open. 11:40 p.m. Julian sat alone in his small office, eyes fixed on the screen. He had hoped this would blow up, but not this fast. A message lit up on his phone from his private assistant. "The entire board has seen the video. They want to hear from you first thing tomorrow." Julian looked down at his desk. Resting there was Eleanor's old security badge retrieved from the guards just hours ago. He flipped it over. On the back, written in blue pen smile, "At least once per shift." He gripped it tightly, not out of anger, but because he knew this was it. The reckoning had begun, not in a boardroom, not through lawyers, but from everyday people who had never once set foot inside Aura. The next morning, every employee at Aura received the same message: all staff meeting, mandatory, 9:00 a.m. No one knew what was happening. The air in the restaurant was heavy, thick with tension. People whispered guesses, but no one dared speak aloud. Marcus Thorne stood at the front of the main hall, his suit crisp, holding an iPad. He was confident. He thought he'd been summoned to manage the crisis. But then the door swung open. And it wasn't the communications director. It wasn't legal counsel. It was Julian Croft. Wearing the simple uniform of a trainee, Julian walked to the front, microphone in hand. The room fell silent. "Good morning," he began. I know you're confused, but it's time you know who I am. He took a deep breath, eyes steady. My name is Julian Croft. I'm the CEO of the company that owns Aura. A few gasps. Whispers rippled through the room. Marcus froze, eyes widening for a fraction of a second before he caught himself. Julian didn't hesitate. He signaled to his assistant, who turned on the large screen behind him. Footage appeared, security camera video from the kitchen corner. Eleanor standing still. Marcus is dumping the lunchbox into the trash. No narration, none needed. Next, a recording played. Aura doesn't run on pity. We serve world-class dining experiences. Marcus's voice was clear, cold, and unmistakable. The room sat in stunned silence. Finally, a screenshot of Marcus's internal group message appeared, complete with his highlighted words and an emoji, "Eliminate all inefficiencies." Julian turned off the screen. His voice was calm but sharp. "For the past 2 weeks, I've worked alongside you. I've seen talent, dedication, and things I could no longer stay silent about." He turned to Marcus. "Marcus Thorne, you're fired. Effective immediately. No protests, no defense." Marcus couldn't speak. 2 security officers approached from the back without being prompted. He was escorted out through a room full of stunned stares and a few visible sighs of relief. Julian turned to the staff. Eleanor Vance was not fired. She was harmed. "And today, I apologize for that." He paused, his voice tightening. "My mother was an immigrant. She washed dishes in a restaurant like this. She built the Aura brand from meals she shared with others. When I saw Eleanor offering food to someone who was hungry, I didn't see a policy violation. I saw the soul of this company." He took another breath, emotion rising. "And I swear, I will never again let someone like Marcus Thorne stain my mother's legacy." The room didn't erupt into applause. No one cheered. But heads began to nod. Slowly, quietly. Something had just shifted, not on paper, but in the hearts of every person standing there. Marcus Thorne walked briskly out of the Aura building, 2 silent security guards trailing behind him. The glass doors slid shut behind him, cutting him off from the world he once ruled through fear. Inside, Julian stood at the center of the main hall, facing the entire staff. He didn't wait. He didn't let silence linger. "Starting today," he said, "Aura will implement a new policy, something I call the Founders Table." Every eye turned to him. Every member of our team, no matter their role, will be served a hot quality meal during each shift. Not leftovers, not scraps, a meal worthy of your contribution. He paused, then added, "This policy is named after my mother, Sophia Croft, a woman who once split her own meals with staff when she ran her first tiny diner." 2 days later, Eleanor Vance returned to Aura. No longer just a prep cook, she was welcomed back by Julian with a new title, Ambassador of Culture and Kindness. Her own office. Double the pay. One mission: to protect the soul of Aura from ever being lost again. As she stepped into the kitchen, the staff rose to their feet. Not by order, not by rank, but out of respect. Leo was the first to approach, wrapping his arms around her. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up," he said, voice trembling. Eleanor smiled and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You survived. Sometimes that's enough." 3 months later, Aura's basement had been transformed into a staff dining space, bright and warm, with wooden tables, green plants, framed photos, and soft music. At the center stood a counter, serving rotating hot meals. Not a cheap buffet, real food cooked with love. Eleanor sat with Leo at a corner table. In front of them, lemon-glazed roast chicken with rice pumpkin soup and creamy egg pudding. Leo laughed between bites. "I just got an art scholarship. The company sponsored it," he said, eyes shining. Julian said, "You signed the reference letter." Eleanor sipped her tea and nodded. "You earned it." Behind them, mounted on the wall, was a gleaming bronze plaque. It read, "No dish is greater than kindness," in memory of Sophia Croft and in honor of Eleanor Vance. Laughter echoed through the room. No more fear. No more coldness. Those who once only knew how to keep their heads down now stood tall together, creating a new aura. One that didn't just earn Michelin stars, but reached people's hearts. Eleanor glanced around, then back to her plate. This time, she wasn't handing out food. This time, she was invited to sit and eat. And she smiled a true smile, full and at peace. Kindness may seem small, but it has the power to transform an entire institution. Eleanor didn't shout. She didn't fight. She simply chose to do what was right. And in the end, it was kindness that defeated cruelty. This story reminds me that no matter who you are, no matter your role, you can be the light in the dark. If you believe heartfelt stories can change the world, subscribe to Toch Story so you won't miss the next journey. Thank you for listening.